Hi, I'm DuEwa Frazier, and I'm the host and creator of Afrofutures Pod, a new digital podcast where I interview poets, scholars, and authors who work on a variety of genres, but focus primarily on Afrofuturism. I'm also the editor of the new volume, Introduction to Afrofuturism, a mixtape in Black literature and arts published by Routledge. Today, I have a special guest, one of my book's contributors, Dr. Shernā Ann Phillips. Hi, Dr. Phillips.
Hey.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me here today on Afrofutures Pod. I'm really excited to speak with you today about your work.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And so, Dr. Phillips, we are going to discuss your wonderful chapter currently in the new volume, Introduction to Afrofuturism, a mixtape in Black literature and arts. And the title of your chapter is In the Afrofuture, Even Jezebels Like Yo-Yo Deserve to be Saved, an exploration of Black female characters in They Cloned Tyrone. Please tell us, what was your inspiration behind writing this particular chapter?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my chapter, you just gave the title, but I'm reiterated. In the Afro-Future, even Jezebels like Yo-Yo Deserve to be Saved, an exploration of Black female characters in They Cloned Tyrone, which is a 2023 film that debuted on Netflix. So in this chapter, I explore how the film challenges traditional stereotypes of Black women through an Afrocentric lens. So I look at how Black female characters in mainstream media, often fall into very limiting archetypes. So it's the loyal asexual mammy, it's the sexually promiscuous and morally loose Jezebel, and then also the feisty, quick-tempered Sapphire. And so these characters, when in need of protection, my research finds that typically these characters remain damsels in distress who are rarely rescued. But in They Cloned Tyrone, it offers a refreshing alternative. So in this 2023 science fiction comedy mystery, the character of Yo-Yo, a Black female prostitute played by Tiana Parrish, is at the heart of a government cloning conspiracy. And so Yo-Yo is multifaceted. She's smart, she's sassy, she's sophisticated. But yet on the flip side, she's also raw, and she embodies both the respect and degradation that's often imposed on Black women characters. Through her character, the film subverts traditional narratives and offers a nuanced portrayal of Black womanhood. So seen through an Afrofuturistic and womanist lens, They Cloned Tyrone asks us to reconsider who deserves to be saved and challenges the erasure of Black women's complexities in speculative fiction. So what inspired me, to get back to your question, is a really cool movie that explored some themes that are at the center of my research.
And that's wonderful. And so, and when you say, the title of the movie, and this is for listeners who may not have the book. So the title of the movie again is They Cloned Tyrone. Can you discuss maybe why you chose that particular work? And just your inspiration, maybe as connected to your research or something that you saw in this film that you were like, okay, this is where I need to, put my analysis in terms of Afrofuturism and things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So I watched the film because I was very curious to see any work with Jamie Foxx in it. Jamie Foxx plays the pimp character in the movie, but any works of Jamie Foxx, I have to see, So I was interested just seeing him alone. Had no idea what I was getting myself into. I tend to, if I know I'm going to watch a film, I don't read the log line. I'm not reading anything about it. I'm just watching this thing. And so as I'm watching it, I was pleasantly surprised to be intrigued by the Black female character in the film, because as I mentioned, typically Black female characters kind of fall into those archetypes. But this Black female character and a lot of the other Black female characters in the film, they did this really cool thing where they just didn't fall into one category. They were so nuanced. And so I said, oh, I would love to explore, some of the themes that are present in the film. And then when I saw the call for papers for Introduction to Afrofuturism and learned that it was a mixtape of Black literature and art, so it wasn't just focused on one aspect of, academia. Sometimes academic books, as it's very heavily just research focused, which I am a researcher, so that's fine. I am a scholar, so that works too. But I love the idea that we could explore and merge different genres of writing and analysis. And so I thought about when I looked at the call for paper and it said, well, you can analyze films that deal with Afrofuturistic themes. And I immediately thought of this film because of the setting. It almost feels it's a modern film in that obviously it was made in 2023 and it's set in present day, but there are some aspects of the film that make you feel like you're, 40 or 50 years ago. So it's this kind of idea of the future of Black folks across the diaspora. It's going to borrow from our past, but take us forward in a different way. And so I just thought it was a really cool film, very present, very current. And it highlighted Black female characters in a way that I hadn't seen before. So I just wanted to explore that a little bit further.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I really love that it's like, so you had your own personal interests as someone who's into film, but then you looked at the, I guess the academic focus or the call and like just merge your own, interests with that and just kind of wrote around that. So that's really cool. And then you mentioning Jamie Foxx, I also think it's just so appropriate because now he's got this new stand-up, which I haven't seen yet, but it's sort of just like Jamie Foxx is really buzzing, kind of in the ethers right now in terms of his work and, just what he's doing in the culture. So I think that's really cool.
Yes, I haven't seen it yet either, but it's on my list because, like I said, anything with Jamie Foxx in it, I'm going to watch. So it's on my list of things to watch for sure.
Totally. And Dr. Phillips, in terms of your research and writing, can you talk about if or how Afrofuturism may have been a part of your work prior to this chapter, or maybe how you thought about Afrofuturism before you kind of, work with us with this book and your wonderful chapter and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So, until this book chapter and still writing this chapter in the book, Afrofuturism hadn't been a primary focus in my research or writing. But the call for papers for Introduction to Afrofuturism sparked my interest in exploring Afrofuturism. So as a result, I'm now working on a manuscript for an Afrofuturistic novel. So
wow. That is amazing. But that's going to lead into like another question. Okay. Well, let me ask you this, because I feel like you're also working from Black Feminist Foundation as well. Could you talk about maybe how that had been prior a part of your research, Black feminism, or focus on Black women's intellectual output or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say, and I like to remind folks that, my primary or my full-time job, I teach part-time as an adjunct at Spelman, but as a full-time gig, I'm a senior VP of communications with 17 years of experience in public relations and journalism. So I've had a front row seat to the power of language and media and shaping public narratives. So my research actually primarily centers on African American literature and culture with a focus on the intersections of creative writing, journalism, and digital media. So, for instance, at Spelman, of course, everyone teaches first year composition, but I also, for the past 2 years, have taught in the spring semester a course called Writing and Editing for Digital Media. And so that just, that digital media is really at the core of my research. But I'm particularly interested in how Black women navigate and reclaim their narratives across all of these spaces, so all of the things that I mentioned, creative writing, journalism, and in the digital space. So key questions that inform my work include: how are Black women using digital platforms for activism and identity expression? How do social media influencers impact the self-image of Black girls, especially in terms of beauty and cultural representation? How do adaptations of African-American literature and film and TV either perpetuate or challenge the erasure of Black women's voices? So contributing to this book has allowed me to expand my academic boundaries, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to engage with Afrofuturism because, as I said, it's opened a new world for me that I hadn't previously explored, but I also try to tie it back to my primary focus research area, which really is, again, it's African-American literature and culture, but with a focus on the intersections of creative writing, journalism, and digital media.
Wow, that's amazing, Dr. Phillips. And it certainly sounds like you're on the cutting edge because everyone is discussing, how the ways in which we communicate or disseminate the news or create support circles, even, forming various communities within a community, in terms of the digital space. So I really appreciate knowing that about your work. And so that leads into, and I think you've answered a bit of this, but certainly we love to hear more on what you're most interested about right now.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to continue expanding my academic and creative horizons. And I know you are also a scholar who is also a creative, who is also all of the things, right? We're not just boxing ourselves into one genre medium.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about you. And likewise, I'm just especially thrilled about the Afrofuturistic novel I'm working on, which is set in a very vibrant, futuristic world full of dynamic Black women. I won't reveal too much just yet because I'm in the very early stages of writing it, but I'm eager to share more when that time comes. And I enjoy, just writing in different genres and producing work in different mediums. Next, I'm planning to submit a proposal for a book chapter that aligns with my research. One upcoming call for papers focuses on an FX docuseries in reality television.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm crafting a proposal that analyzes a episode of the Fox docuseries called The New York Times Presents. And the episode is titled, Who Gets to Be an Influencer? So this episode examines the rise of Collab Crib, which is one of the first mainstream Black social media creator mansions. So I'm really excited to just submit on that proposal and hopefully, have another chapter in an upcoming book. And I'm also working on some creative projects, including self-publishing a poetry collection that's long overdue.
Yes. I'm giving you snaps on that.
Thank you. It's long overdue. It's already it's laid out, it's ready to go. I've just been, I don't know, just kind of psyching myself out because on the one hand, in academia, it's like self-publishing isn't, regarded as highly as, traditional publisher, but I just have to release it the way I'm going to release it.
You never know, Dr. Phillips, not to cut you off, but you may be self-publishing a work, but it could lead to other opportunities. And so it's like, we're thinking about possibilities because you never know, maybe academia will embrace that work along with the body of your other work. You know what I mean? So it's not like a singular thing you're doing, but like it's a part of a whole, kind of a focus that you have just to get your thoughts and your work out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that because I've been sitting on it for probably a couple years. It's not probably. It's been a couple years now since my son's been born. So it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna release it. And send me all the good vibes so that I don't talk myself out of it again.
Totally.
So that's one thing that I definitely want to do this upcoming year. And then taking my stage play on the road. I've been writing and producing plays for years. So I want to just get back into producing works, mine and that of others in the upcoming year. And of course, as I mentioned, just continue to develop this Afrofuturistic novel that you've inspired me to write, just being
Oh my
part
gosh.
of this process. So I'm excited
For that. I'm like a mama. Like you're the second or third person that's told me like since our book, like other contributors have been sparked or inspired to work in greater ways on either what they submitted and expanding that or another idea that came out about, since the book. So I'm like, okay, I feel like not that y'all are not my children, obviously, but I mean kind of like I'm inspiring sort of like I was a mother of this book, and like now y'all are going out there to imagine other works to build upon your work. And that makes me feel really good that I've contributed in that way. But I always believe that the work, it has come through me, like not that it is not me, but just the divine nature of creativity and imagination, that I'm thankful that this work chose me and that I was able to collaborate with so many of you wonderful scholars and writers. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Phillips.
Yes, and thank you for just putting this all together, because you said it just perfectly. I couldn't have said it in any better. It's been an inspiration. It's been just a gift, really, that just keeps on giving, creatively, and just even, and not just creatively, but academically as well, from just a scholar approach to this process. So it's been great.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, Dr. Phillips, we before we certainly we have a few more things that we want to learn about you, but I'd love if you can read an excerpt from your chapter that's in our book for the listeners. I'm sure this will be an amazing treat for them.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to read an excerpt just from the beginning, kind of, which just sets up the chapter. And I'm not sure how much time I have for the excerpt. Maybe I'll just
take your time, like go with your intuition. I'm here and I have my book open to your chapter.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to just start from the beginning. It is not uncommon to see Black female characters who fall into three distinct archetypes: the large, asexual, good-humored, sassy, and loyal servant, Mammy; the shameless, morally unconstrained, sex-crazed Jezebel; and the feisty and quick-tempered Sapphire, all of whom, when in need of protection, become the damsels in distress who are never rescued. But the Afro-Future looks brighter in They Cloned Tyrone, a science fiction comedy mystery film that puts a Black female prostitute, Yo-Yo, played by Tiana Parrish, at the center of a government cloning conspiracy. She is both smart and sassy, sophisticated and ratchet, demeaned and respected. It is rare to find a central Black female protagonist who both upholds and defies Black female stereotypes and is deemed worthy of protection. But through the character of Yo-Yo, the film manages to capture the humanity and duality of Black womanhood. The critically acclaimed 2023 Netflix film, They Cloned Tyrone, uses Yo-Yo and other Black female characters to challenge and subvert traditional narratives and offers a fresh perspective on the role of Black female characters in speculative fiction when seen through a womanist lens, and the Afro-Future, even Jezebels deserve to be saved. They Cloned Tyrone, co-written and directed by Joel Taylor, is set in a fictitious southern neighborhood called The Glen, which looked like the result of Memphis and Atlanta meeting at a blaxploitation movie premiere in the 1970s, having a crack baby together in the 1980s, and abandoning it in a boarded-up home in the 1990s. Though the film is set in the present day or perhaps the near future, the characters, their fashion sense, their cars, their way of life often felt like they were stuck in a time warp somewhere between 1975 and 1995. Even the town itself appeared outdated in its infrastructure and limited in its resources. As Taylor explained in an interview with the New York Times, this was intentional, as a lot of places in the South don't have the resources and infrastructure that they should. So even though the people might be making the most of it, there's still this patina where everything feels like it's from the 80s. That's something that was always in the forefront of our minds when we were designing The Glen. Three main characters who were making the most of this world were a drug dealer named Fontaine, a pimp named Slick Charles, and a prostitute named Yo-Yo, played by John Boyega, Jamie Foxx, and Tiana Parrish, respectively. Parrish's character Yo-Yo will be the focus of this paper, along with supporting Black female characters Mama, Fontaine's mother, and Biddy, the town snitch, who was also a drug-addicted street worker. The audience first meets Yo-Yo as she is mid-argument with her pimp, Slick Charles, played by Jamie Foxx. She's a dark-skinned, curvaceous Black woman with a voluminous curly afro. She wears gold hoop earrings, an exposed bra beneath a snug tank top, jean shorts, and thick gold belt around her waist. They're inside a motel room where they apparently reside with other prostitutes. She's virulently packing a suitcase as Slick Charles attempts to belittle her to stay.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
Yes, I was about to stop right there.
Okay. I appreciate it so much. And one thing I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, and this may not have been specifically in the list of questions, but it just kind of jumps out at me. Why do you think, just opinion-based, why now that we're getting so many different works in film, I would say, whether on streaming or the big screen, we know that, Black Panther has had two, and we've had Neptune Frost by Saul Williams, and, some other various, Kindred became a series on FX a year or maybe 2 years ago. Why do you think now, like out of all times, why now do you think there's more seemingly a focus on Afrofuturistic themes, on dystopic themes, just related to Black folks, just in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it could be a combination of, really around COVID-19, 2020, when the world was shut down and, George Floyd uprisings were occurring, and seemingly folks were a little bit more conscious of what has been happening with Black and Brown folks since the beginning of time. And there was this need for stories that weren't what has been called trauma porn, if you will. So there was this desire for by Black audiences, really a demand, a request, an urgency for us to share stories that went beyond our trauma. And I think what may be happening now is, when you think about the Afrofuture, when you think about even a dystopian society, you're setting it outside of the norm. You're setting it outside of what an everyday environment might look like for someone. So it's making sure that we are staying true to the experience of Black folks without forcing an audience to sit through something traumatic as they may have experienced in real life, if that makes sense. So, when I think about They Cloned Tyrone, it's not that those traumatic themes that we've seen in, Black films from the 80s and 90s isn't present in They Cloned Tyrone, but it's an interesting way of presenting that information that takes you out of an everyday environment. It's almost, in some ways, parody. It's turning these things on its head, turning these stereotypes on its head, and then it's putting you in a world that is clearly unlike anything that you've ever seen. So it's finding a balance between wanting to tell stories that are authentic to the experience, but also to looking ahead to what does that future look like for folks in the African diaspora in years to come.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that, Dr. Phillips. And I'm going to amend the question that I had on what's next for you in your work to mention first to thank you for including me and Professor Curtis Chrysler, who is Poet Laureate of Indiana University, in the GCC, I want to say CEA conference that you participated in, I believe in October.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me. That was great. I was so happy that you all could join at the last minute and just, yeah, it was great. So thank you.
That was amazing. So you presented your chapter there in Georgia, and we were on virtually. And so in terms of when I say what's next for your work, do you have other plans to present your chapter in any other forums or conferences coming up, or any extension other than your novel, of course, for your scholarship from this particular chapter?
Yeah, so for this particular chapter, I'll say this, I have my eyes open all the time for ways and opportunities to present the work. Um, Teaching, of course, is always an avenue. So I'd love to incorporate elements of the book and in my classes. So I typically teach, like I mentioned earlier, writing and editing for digital media in the spring. I haven't received my contract yet for the spring, so I'm not sure what I'll be teaching. I maybe end up teaching first year composition, but either way, both of those courses I could utilize this book in those courses. And so I find ways to just kind of integrate it into whatever I'm doing, whether it's teaching or presenting at conferences. So I just have my eyes open for the next opportunity to just showcase this great book and its great body of work.
Wow, that's amazing, and I'm so also inspired by you as well. Just in hearing about your work with not only your scholarship, but in terms of your motivation to work on your plays and to continue to get your work out there and promoting your writing. And so, Dr. Phillips, how can we best follow you and find your work? And please give your socials and whatever website you want to share with us.
Sure. So my website is www.shernation.com. So that's SHERNATION.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Nate Phillips.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Phillips, for joining me here on Afrofutures Pod. I do wish you the best of success with everything you're doing. And please keep me informed. Any updates? Hey, when you have that poetry collection and any of your other work, we can switch you on over to Nerdosity Podcast and I can interview you on my other podcast.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
So that would be really cool. Okay, well, Dr. Phillips, thanks again.
Okay, thank you.